The silence in the stars. The galaxy had always been noisy. Trade signals, patrol messages, colony updates, and endless chatter filled the void. Humanity had grown used to this constant hum, the invisible web of communication stretching across star systems. Silence was rare, silence meant danger, and then the silence spread. It started at the far edges of known space. A small colony stopped sending reports. At first, Command thought it was a technical issue. Relays failed all the time. But then another outpost went quiet. Then another. Within weeks, 5 human colonies had fallen silent. No distress calls, no emergency beacons. Just nothing. The first patrol ship was sent to investigate. It never returned. The second fleet sent after it found the colony empty. Buildings stood tall, machines still ran, but not a single living soul remained. It was as if the people had vanished overnight, leaving only shadows of life behind. Fear spread quickly. Humans were not the only ones watching. Alien traders whispered, in fear. Some said it was the Draconians. The Draconian Armada was already a name that carried terror. They were predators of the stars, conquerors who ruled with fire and steel. When they moved, worlds burned. Many believed the silence was their doing, but there was something strange. Even the Draconians had gone quiet. No sightings, no raids, no messages of conquest. The armada that once shook the galaxy with its marches had vanished into the same silence that swallowed the colonies. The Galactic Council argued without end. Some said the Draconians were preparing for war, building strength in the dark. Others believed they had been destroyed by some unknown force. A few whispered that the Armada had found something so terrible it had consumed them. Humanity could not ignore the silence. It was spreading too close to home. They needed answers. Admiral Karos stood on the bridge of the battleship Resolute, staring at the holographic map before him. Systems once bright with traffic now showed empty space. Blue dots of communication faded into black one after another. It was like watching stars die. "Admiral," said the comms officer, her voice tense, "no new signals from Vega Colony. They've gone dark too." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "That makes 6 in 3 weeks." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew what that meant. The silence was moving closer. A decision was made. A recon fleet would enter the last known Draconian sector. Their mission: find answers, discover the truth, and, if possible, confirm whether the Armada was still alive. It was a dangerous plan, but there was no choice. Humanity could not fight an enemy it did not understand. The fleet launched with heavy hearts. Families said their goodbyes in crowded ports, unsure if they would ever see their loved ones again. Soldiers checked their weapons twice, knowing they might be useless against what awaited them. Pilots whispered to each other, asking why the Draconians would suddenly go silent. No one had an answer. As the ships cut through hyperspace, the silence grew heavier. Normally, comms picked up background noise, signals from nearby systems, stray transmissions, even echoes from long-dead satellites. But here, in Draconian space, there was nothing. The void felt deeper, colder. "Dead silent," whispered one officer. "Zero contact." The fleet pressed forward. Scanners swept the empty systems. Planets once known to belong to the Draconians showed ruins. Massive cities, once filled with millions, stood lifeless. Their towers leaned like broken teeth, their streets covered in ash. War had touched these places, but there were no signs of battles, no wreckage, no bodies, just emptiness. The deeper the fleet traveled, the stranger it became. They found Draconian ships drifting in the void, massive war vessels larger than human carriers. But they were dark. No engines, no life signs. Their hulls bore scars, not from weapons but from something else, something that had torn through them from the inside. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Karos felt the weight of the silence pressing down. His officers looked pale, their hands trembling as they reported each new discovery. "Admiral," the science officer said, his voice unsteady, We've scanned 12 Draconian vessels, all abandoned, all without power. There are no survivors. Karos narrowed his eyes. What could bring down the Armada? No one answered. Rumors spread quickly through the fleet. Some said the Draconians had unleashed a weapon they could not control. Others whispered about ancient predators that lived in the void between stars. A few said the Draconians had angered something older, something hidden, and now they had paid the price. The silence became unbearable. Soldiers and crew alike felt it gnawing at them, filling their dreams with shadows. Every creak of the ship sounded louder. Every flicker of light seemed like an omen. Some swore they saw movement in the dark, shadows crawling across the empty ships they passed. And yet the fleet pressed on. They had to. Humanity needed answers. The admiral stood tall, hiding his own unease. He stared into the void where the Draconian Armada should have been and whispered words that carried across the bridge. This silence is not peace. This silence is warning. No one dared disagree. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. And humanity was about to discover the terrifying truth behind the silence. The lost signals, the human recon fleet moved deeper into Draconian space. Every jump through hyperspace felt longer than the last. The further they traveled, the more unnatural the silence became. Entire sectors that should have been alive with traffic were empty. It was not only that the Draconians were gone, it was as if everything that touched their empire had been erased. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Karos stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the fading blue lights of the star map. Each light represented a system, a colony, a people. One by one, they were marked as silent. "Admiral," said the communications officer, "we've swept 6 systems. 0 transmissions, no distress calls, no automated relays, nothing." Karos nodded slowly, his face calm but his voice heavy. Dead silent, just like the others. Whispers spread through the fleet. Sailors spoke of ghosts in the void. Soldiers told stories of cursed stars. Even hardened officers felt the chill of unease. The galaxy was never quiet. To find nothing was worse than finding war. The fleet entered what had once been a Draconian core system. Here, the Draconians had built their greatest shipyards, where massive warships were forged. Humanity expected resistance. They prepared for ambushes. But what they found was more disturbing. The shipyards were there, but they were empty. Massive frames of unfinished battleships drifted lifelessly. Machinery hung frozen in place as if abandoned mid-task. No crews, no guards, no movement. "Scanners?" Karos asked. The science officer shook his head. "No life signs, no power signatures. It's like they all stopped." A strange unease fell across the bridge. To leave shipyards unguarded was unthinkable. The Draconians had built their empire on war. For their war machines to sit abandoned was more terrifying than if they had been destroyed. The fleet pressed onward. In orbit of a once populated planet, they found entire cities frozen in time. Towers still stood, streets stretched wide, but not a single light shone. From above, the cities looked like skeletons, vast, hollow shells of life. Ground. Teams landed to investigate. At first, they reported only emptiness. No corpses, no damage, no signs of panic. Homes were filled with belongings, meals still waiting on tables, machines still running. It was as if the inhabitants had vanished in an instant. But then came the first discovery. A soldier entered a Draconian government hall. The walls were covered with strange symbols carved in desperation, claw marks scraping into metal and stone. The symbols were warnings repeated again and again. Though translators could not decipher all of it, the meaning was clear. It is inside. It watches. It consumes. When the report reached the Resolute, the admiral's face darkened. "They didn't flee," he murmured. "Something took them." The crews grew restless. Some wanted to turn back, others argued to press deeper. Humanity had come for answers, and answers lay ahead. not behind. Days turned into weeks as the fleet advanced further. The deeper they went, the more ghost systems they found. Massive Draconian war fleets floated abandoned, their hulls scarred by something sharp and alien. The ships were intact but empty, no blood, no bodies, only silence. In one system, the fleet intercepted faint signals, broken transmissions that barely formed words. The comms officer strained to piece them together. Distorted voices crackled through the static. Don't let it spread. Not ours anymore. Dead, but still moving. Then the signal cut. The officers on the bridge exchanged nervous looks. The words had been in Draconian tongue. Whatever the Armada had faced, it had broken them enough to cry warnings. Into the void. Replay the message, Karos ordered. The comms officer shook his head. It's gone, Admiral. Signal faded as soon as it appeared. The Admiral stared into the dark beyond the viewports. They tried to warn us. The fleet continued, though the tension grew unbearable. Crews whispered that they felt eyes on them, though the scanners showed nothing. Pilots swore they saw shadows moving among the stars. Each new discovery made the silence more suffocating. Then they found the flagship. It drifted alone in the void, larger than any ship humanity had ever seen. The Draconian Armada's pride, the Bloodfang. Its hull stretched for kilometers, covered in scars. Entire sections of armor had been ripped open as if by claws. No power, no movement, only a hollow giant staring through the void. When boarding teams entered, they found darkness. Hallways stretched endlessly, lights flickering faintly. Strange growths clung to the walls, organic and metallic at once, pulsing, slowly as if alive. The soldiers reported in whispers. There are no Draconians here, only these things. One soldier reached out to touch the growth. It shivered beneath his hand. Then the lights across the ship flickered violently. The boarding teams withdrew in panic, dragging their comrade back to the shuttles. From the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Karos gave the order no one wanted to hear. Seal the Bloodfang. No one goes back inside. For the first time, the Admiral allowed the fear to reach his voice. This is not silence, he said softly. This is infestation. The fleet turned its eyes to the deeper void, where more signals flickered faintly like dying stars. What they had found was not the end of the Draconian Armada. It was the beginning of something far worse. The hidden horror. The Bloodfang drifted in silence, but the crew of the Resolute could not forget what they had seen inside. The strange growths, pulsing like veins of a living creature, had no place aboard a warship. The Draconians were fierce, but they were not careless. They would never allow such corruption to spread through their pride and power, and yet the flagship was full of it. The Admiral ordered the fleet to move on, but the unease lingered. Whispers spread through the ships. Some believed the Draconians had built a weapon and lost control of it. Others said something older, something unknown had consumed them. No one could agree, but everyone was afraid. Days later, the recon fleet picked up faint signals from another Draconian system. Unlike the emptiness they had seen before, these signals were active, distorted, broken, but alive. The decision was made to investigate. When they arrived, the system was a graveyard. Dozens of Draconian ships floated in orbit, their hulls scarred and torn. A planet below showed entire cities twisted into ruins, towers bent like melted metal. Yet the signals continued, faint and irregular, like echoes of dying voices. Boarding teams were sent once more. The first ship they entered was small, a destroyer. Its halls were filled with the same growths they had seen before, crawling across the walls like vines. But this time they moved. Slowly, faintly, but alive. The soldiers kept their weapons raised as they advanced. At the bridge, they found shapes. Not Draconians. Not human. Corpses, or what looked like corpses, stuck to the walls, fused with the growths. Their faces were stretched, their limbs twisted, as if they had been changed into something else. One soldier whispered, They didn't die. They were taken. When the Admiral received the report, his blood ran cold. He gave strict orders. No one was to touch the growths. No one was to stay aboard longer than needed. But curiosity pushed some too far. In another vessel, soldiers recovered fragments of recordings. The images were broken, static-filled, but clear enough to reveal the horror. Draconian commanders shouted orders, their fleets under attack, not from human ships, not from alien invaders, but from their own. Crew members turned on each other as the infection spread, their bodies twisting, their voices screaming. The recording ended with one desperate message. It is not an enemy. It is a hunger. Do not let it spread. The recon fleet fell into silence after hearing it. Even the Admiral could not hide the dread in his eyes. Still, they pressed further. They needed to understand. On the planet below, landing teams entered one of the ruined cities. The streets were silent, but the walls pulsed faintly, the same growth spreading through stone and steel alike. It was as if the entire city had become part of something living. At the heart of the city, they found a chamber. Once a government hall, now unrecognizable. The walls were covered in strange organic structures, pods glowing faintly. Inside, some of them were draconian bodies, half-changed, their eyes open but empty. Others were empty shells, cracked as if something inside had crawled free. The soldiers froze. "Admiral, this isn't a weapon," one of them whispered over the comms. "It's a parasite." As they spoke, one of the pods split open. A shape pulled itself free, tall, twisted, its body a fusion of flesh and metal. Its head snapped toward the soldiers, its eyes glowing faintly. It moved with unnatural speed, and before the team could fire, one man was dragged into the dark. His scream echoed through the comms before cutting to static. The Admiral's order was instant. "All teams, evacuate. Now." Chaos followed. Soldiers ran through pulsing corridors, firing into shadows that moved too fast. Some made it back to their shuttles. Others did not. By the time the landing teams lifted off, half their number was gone. On the Resolute, silence filled the bridge as the survivors stumbled back aboard. Their armor was torn, their eyes wide with fear. None of them spoke of what they had seen, but the truth was clear in their faces. The Admiral turned to his officers. The Draconians didn't fall in battle. They were consumed. The fleet considered retreat, but the Admiral knew that if humanity turned back now, they would be blind to what was coming. Whatever had taken the Draconians was spreading. If it reached human space, it would not stop. "Set course for the core of their territory," Karos ordered. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. "We must know how far this infection has spread." No one argued. As the fleet jumped, once more into the void, the whispers began again. Ghost signals, broken voices across the comms. The words were always the same. "Don't let it spread." Not ours anymore. Dead, but still moving. And behind those whispers came a truth no one wanted to face. The Draconian Armada was not gone. It had been transformed. Humanity confronts the void. The recon fleet pushed deeper into Draconian space. Every jump revealed more devastation. Systems that once burned with Draconian pride now lay in silence. Cities floated in orbit as debris. Ships drifted like corpses, and planets showed scars so deep they looked wounded. But worse than the silence was the sense that something was watching. On the Resolute, Admiral Karos studied the growing list of dead systems. His officers gave reports with grim faces. Every new scan revealed more of the same: emptiness, ruins, and ships crawling with the strange growth. Then came the signal. It was faint at first, broken static, but it carried a pattern. Unlike the desperate Draconian warnings they had intercepted before, this signal was rhythmic, like a heartbeat. "Origin?" Karos asked. The comms officer's face was pale. "From the ships ahead, Admiral, the ones drifting in Sector 9. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Dead ships don't send signals." Cautiously, the fleet approached. Before them floated more than 100 Draconian warships. They were vast, powerful vessels, destroyers, carriers, dreadnoughts, the kind that had once crushed entire civilizations. Now they drifted silently, their lights cold, their hulls scarred. Scanners swept across them, searching for life. At first they showed nothing. Then, slowly, readings flickered into existence. Energy pulses, but not from engines. Heat, but not from reactors. Movement, but not like living crews. "Admiral," the science officer said quietly, "those ships, they're active." Before the order to retreat could be given, the fleet's sensors screamed. One by one, the Draconian vessels lit up. Engines flared, weapons glowed, and the silent armada began to move. But there were no life signs aboard, no crews, no Draconian voices giving commands. The ships moved in unison as if controlled by one mind. "Contact! Multiple hostiles powering weapons!" shouted the tactical officer. Karos gritted his teeth. "All ships, defensive formation. Do not let them close." The void erupted in fire. The first volley from the Draconian ships struck like thunder. Human shields flared, hulls shuddered, and alarms screamed across the fleet. But humanity fought back. The Resolute and her escorts opened fire, beams of energy slicing through infected hulls. Explosions lit the darkness, fragments scattering into the void. The truth revealed. The recon fleet limped away from the battle, their ships scarred, their crews shaken. They had seen the impossible. Dead warships that fought without crews, fleets that rebuilt themselves, and an enemy that could not be reasoned with. For the first time, humanity understood why the Draconians had fallen silent. But the Admiral knew they could not stop here. If they returned home with half-truths, the galaxy would not believe them. They needed proof. They needed the truth. The fleet pressed into the deepest part of Draconian space, their homeworld system. It was the place where the Armada had been born, the beating heart of their empire. If answers existed anywhere, they would be here. When they arrived, the sight froze every soul aboard. The Draconian homeworld hung shattered. Its surface was split open by massive wounds, as if something had torn its crust apart from below. Entire continents had collapsed into burning seas. Cities that had once stretched across the land were nothing but ruins consumed by crawling growth. Towers of stone and steel were twisted into shapes that looked alive, bending like the ribs of some colossal beast. Scanners revealed the impossible. The infection wasn't just on the ships. It had spread into the planet itself. The world was alive in a way no world should be. As the fleet orbited, signals rose from the surface. Unlike the desperate warnings they had intercepted before, these signals were steady, unified. They were not Draconian voices. They were something else, something colder. The comms officer listened, her face pale. "Admiral, the signal isn't language. It's command code. The Armada is being controlled." The bridge fell silent, and then the homeworld answered. From the cracks of the planet, enormous structures lifted into the skies. They were not ships in the traditional sense. They were monstrosities of metal and flesh fused together, shaped by the infection into nightmares. They moved with the grace of predators, their weapons glowing like suns. The infected Armada rose to meet its creators. The fleet braced for battle, but the Admiral held up a hand. "Wait, observe." On the surface, the truth revealed itself. In the ruins of a Draconian city, hidden deep inside a fortress, they saw the remains of something terrible. Ancient records, fragments of data, and carved warnings told the story. The Draconians had not found the infection by accident. They had created it. It was meant to be a weapon, something to make their Armada invincible. A parasite designed to fuse with ships, repair them, make them eternal. A weapon that would ensure no empire could ever challenge them again. But in their arrogance, they lost control. The weapon did not obey. It consumed. It spread. It turned their fleets into puppets, their worlds into breeding grounds. The Draconians had not been conquered by another empire. They had been devoured by their own creation. The Admiral's hands clenched at the edge of the console. They built their own doom, The officers stared in horror. And now it's spreading. The infected ships above the homeworld moved toward the human fleet. The comms filled with static once more, but this time the words were not desperate. They were chilling, spoken in a voice that was not a voice. You will join us. The Admiral made his choice. All ships retreat now. Carry this truth back, the galaxy must know. Engines roared. Hyperspace gates opened and the fleet fled. Behind them, the infected armada gave chase, but only for a moment. As the humans escaped, the swarm turned back to the stars, spreading outward like a tide. When the fleet re-entered, safe space, silence filled the bridge. Survivors sat in shock, their minds heavy with what they had witnessed. They had seen the truth behind the Draconian Armada, and it was worse than any war, any empire, any enemy. Admiral Karros recorded the final report. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed the weight of fear. The Draconians are gone, their empire destroyed by their own creation. The Armada is no longer theirs. It belongs to the infection. It is alive. It spreads. And if it reaches us, if it reaches anyone, the galaxy will not survive. The message was sent to every corner of human space, then to the Council itself. The galaxy would know, but knowledge brought no comfort. For the Draconians had laughed at warnings, and now they were ash. Humanity had discovered the truth, and now they carried a new warning into the stars. The Armada was not dead. The Armada was coming,